Hi, I'm Julia, and today I'm going to be presenting my final restoration project on Spanish Creek. So to introduce the project, we're going to be talking about a little bit of the location information. Spanish Creek is a stream located in Plumas County, and it runs through the town of Quincy. Spanish Creek spans approximately 28 miles before connecting with Indian Creek and eventually flowing into the East Branch North Fork Feather River. A little bit more specific project location information. Our preliminary site assessment took place on the stretch of Spanish Creek just south of Feather River College's athletic fields. And along this section of stream, even though it has a lot of problems with incision, there is evidence of beaver returning as some small dams have been built. So why are we looking at Spanish Creek? Some of the issues, as I mentioned, the stream has become increasingly incised and eroded throughout the years. And this has resulted in huge amounts of sediment being released into the waterway as dirt crumbles from the sides of the incised waterway. This increase in sediment has resulted in reduced productivity of fisheries, and it also affects humans as the aesthetics of the stream are diminished as the water gets cloudier. And this is also making the reach less desirable for recreation. The deep cut of the stream causes water to move quickly across the landscape rather than percolating into the surrounding ground, and this has resulted in the surrounding meadows becoming desiccated. So on this slide, we have an example of an incised stream. On the left, you can see the steep, abrupt dirt cliffs, which are prone to crumbling. And on the right, you can see that there is just a narrow green space along the water's edge, and the landscape quickly turns to be drier as the water does not penetrate far into the surrounding soil. So historically, the land around Spanish Creek had a lot of mining. Hydraulic mining was used to extract gold just upstream of the project site, and this permanently altered the watershed. A plethora of previously concealed materials became unearthed, and some of these materials were extremely toxic, such as asbestos and arsenic. And the mining also led to the variety of rocks that can be found along Spanish Creek. Currently, most of the land lining Spanish Creek's shores is farmland, with a lot of it being agricultural. And these fields have been gradually getting smaller as the incised stream's edge crumbles. For the areas that have cattle, there are further issues as they contribute to erosion when they move to the stream's edge for water. On this slide, you can see on the left a map of historic mining sites. Right where my cursor is hovering over is around where the project site is. And you can see just upstream, there's some mines, and there's more mines up here. These have since been abandoned, but the damage has already been done. And then on the right, you can see kind of the effects that cattle have on the edge of a stream. This ground is very crumbly, and to get a good foothold, the cattle really have to dig their hooves in, and this results in more and more dirt falling into the water. So what is the purpose? The Spanish Creek restoration's purpose is just to restore the integrity of the ecosystem. I suggest a series of low-tech restoration builds along the reach, and these would be following the methods used to construct beaver dam analogs, BDAs. I suggest that 3 new dam structures will be built along a 2-mile stretch, one above the existing natural dams that have been built by beavers and 2 below. And the intended and projected outcomes of completing this project is that the flow of Spanish Creek would be slowed. Sediment would be captured in various points along the reach behind these structures. There would be increased fishery habitat. The floodplain would be rehydrated as the stream bed gradually built up and repaired itself, and we would also be providing richer habitat through the creation of water pools. So why do we want to use BDAs over other methods such as pond and plug? BDAs aim to restore balance to ecosystems in a way that emulates the effect beavers have on the landscape and waterways. This also encourages beavers back into the system, and we can expect them to largely take over the project down the line. That's at least the hope, is that the beavers will come in and they will provide maintenance with their own construction on our builds. BDAs also require fewer resources than other similar builds because there's no land moving involved, and this also results in less expensive builds. Other than the support posts, BDAs primarily use local materials such as willow, which we have a lot of along this stretch of the reach. And you can use the willow, which is very pliable, to weave through the support rods, which creates a semi-permeable dam structure. Because we would be using a lot of local materials, this minimizes the risk of introducing non-natives, which could tag along onto materials if we were moving it from a different site. BDAs can also be completed without any heavy machinery, and the labor is easy enough to be carried out by newly trained volunteers. So even though BDAs have a lot of upsides, there are some potential concerns for this project. The first concern that I'd like to address is that there's the belief that altering stream flow and allowing pools to form would cause decreased water availability downstream. And to address this, I will just mention that even though the initial flow may be reduced, the overall result would be an increase of water availability as structures prevent water from being flushed out of the area too quickly. Our second concern is that beaver-like structures can cause flooding. And again, while this has some valid concerns, they actually prevent major flow events from causing downstream flooding. So while there might be a little bit of flooding initially right around the structure, it will actually prevent worse flooding in the future. Another concern is that BDAs are usually small and can therefore be more likely to wash out, and water can rush around the sides of them. And my suggestion to fix this concern is to implement a series of BDAs, which will take some stress off of the existing beaver dams that we have and spread out the pressure and lower washout risk. So here on this slide, we have some of the initial survey measurements. We used a Marsh-McBurney flow meter, and we recorded the maximum velocity being 1.18 feet per second, with the mean being 0.37 feet per second. The area of the section of channel was 8.6 square feet, and then we can plug this into the equation to get discharge, which is area times velocity, and we got 3.22 cubic feet per second. And on the right, you can see a representative cross-section of Spanish Creek. So on this side here, where my cursor is, you can see that the side is extremely steep. There's not much of a gradual change from the bottom of the stream bed to the side. And we would be hoping to kind of make it more of a smooth slope, so that the water would be spread out more and it wouldn't be continuing to incise the channel further. So for the monitoring program recommendations that I have, I think that we should make sure to be checking in on stream discharge, turbidity, water temperature, and presence of invasive species. So we're going to want to be looking at stream discharge because this indicates if the water is seeping through the BDAs too much or if the water has become too stagnant. And we'd want to compare this stream discharge to our initial recording of stream discharge that I showed in the last slide. For turbidity, we could expect turbidity to drop as sediment is collected behind the BDAs, and this would be very good for the system overall, as more sediment wouldn't be washing further downstream. As for water temperature, we would hope to see the water temperature stay cool to allow for healthier fisheries, as fish prefer cooler water. And we would also want to make sure that invasive species are not invading the area. And we could use visual encounter surveys to make sure that there are not too many invasive species around. And we need to determine whether a disturbance during the building process has reduced native habitat quality. So for time frame of monitoring, I think that we should record our variables before the new dams are built, which some of them have already been recorded. And then we also would want to record directly after the completion of the 3 dams. And after 3 months, workers should return to the site and retake the measurements. And then again, after another 3 months, at 6 months total after the project's completion. If there are concerns, then we should keep coming back to the site in 3-month intervals until it's been a year post-project, because that will give us a bit of an idea of how the project is going. After the first 2 check-ins, if everything's looking good, the next time that we need to look at these variables is in another 6 months after just 1 year past when the dams were built. And if the variables are still looking promising after the 1 year mark, monitoring can just continue on a yearly basis. We don't have to keep coming back every 3 months if it looks like things are going well. And my suggestion to make this monitoring project a little bit more doable is to involve FRC students. The Environmental Studies program is already very hands-on at FRC, and a lot of classes take data and aim to show students how to take proper data. So this could be a very useful resume builder and also just a good learning experience for students that would also take a lot of the pressure off of the initial project builders. My recommendations for future work, I think that there should be at least 10 years in between the initial project completion and a decision on whether to expand the project or not. And this is because even though 10 years seems like a long time, it's really not on an ecological scale. So we need to allow enough time for the ecosystem to settle. And if we continue on and make more dams along the reach before we know that the current ones that we have are giving us the results that we want, it would potentially expand the issues even further, and it would be a lot harder to mitigate later on. If the variables are favorable after 10 years, then we can start to consider adding more BDAs to the system. But it's also very important to consider that by then the beaver will hopefully be coming back into the system in larger numbers, and they will likely have modified a lot of our structures. And their modifications could result in more or less work needed from us. So we can kind of just let the system play out for 10 years and just see where we're even needed, because there may be areas that in our initial survey we don't think need to be changed at all. But then with the way that the water is coming back into the system and moving, we might need to reassess what we initially had planned for. If unfavorable results occur after this 10-year span, then we should consider modification or removal of one or more BDAs. So like I was saying, we might see the water flowing across the landscape different than we were expecting. And this might mean that we need to modify our original builds and make sure that it's continuing to be favorable and beneficial to the ecosystem. If you have any questions, you can contact me. My name is Julia Neal, and my email is jbneal@frc.edu. Thank you.